This year, early Social Security claims surged, and some reports show a 16% jump as fear spreads that the program is running out of money. That fear is pushing people into one of the most permanent mistakes in retirement. Claiming at 62 can lock in a check that is up to 30% smaller for life. Not for a year, for life. And that means a panic decision made in 8 minutes can quietly cost a retiree hundreds of thousands of dollars over the decades that follow. So why are so many Americans rushing to claim early? And is this fear protecting them or permanently weakening the years they may need security most? To understand why this fear is spreading so fast, the first thing to separate is the headline from the reality. When people hear that Social Security is running out of money, many imagine the same picture. A door slamming shut, checks stopping, the system vanishing just before they need it. That image is powerful, and it pushes people toward one instinctive conclusion. Grab the money now before it is gone. But that is not how the system actually works. Social Security is primarily funded through ongoing payroll taxes paid by workers and employers. The concern analysts have raised for years is not that the entire program disappears overnight. The concern is that the trust fund reserves could be depleted on the current path in the next decade, which could force a reduction in scheduled benefits if lawmakers do nothing. That is serious, but it is very different from nothing will be paid. Even under widely cited projections, benefits would still continue at a reduced level rather than drop to zero. That distinction matters because panic thrives on exaggeration. And panic is especially dangerous here because the claiming decision is not easily reversible. Once a person claims early, that lower base benefit generally stays with them for life. In other words, a temporary wave of fear can create a permanent cut. This is what makes the current moment so emotionally dangerous for retirees and near retirees. The headlines feel urgent, the decision feels defensive, but the consequences can last 30 years. Claiming at age 62 instead of waiting until full retirement age can reduce the monthly benefit significantly. Waiting until age 70 can raise it further. Most people know that part. What many people do not understand is that the choice is not just about getting money sooner versus getting more later. It is about what kind of retirement the household is building. A smaller check may feel like relief in the early years, especially when markets are uncertain and confidence is low. But that same smaller check can become a weak income floor later in the years when medical costs rise. Work is no longer an option, and one spouse may be left alone. This is why the classic break-even mindset can be too narrow. It asks, at what age do the totals catch up? But retirees do not live retirement as a math line on a chart. They live it as stages: the active years, the slower years, the widowhood years, the years when inflation matters more, the years when a guaranteed check can mean the difference between flexibility and fear. So the deeper issue is not simply whether early claiming is right or wrong. The deeper issue is why people are suddenly making an irreversible income decision based on a fear that may not match how the system actually works. And that leads to the first major question. If panic is driving this wave of early claims, what exactly are people afraid of? And why is that fear strong enough to overpower logic, even for households that could afford to wait? Fear spreads faster when it sounds like common sense. That is exactly what is happening with Social Security right now. People are not just hearing that the system has problems, they are hearing a much more emotional message. Get yours before it is gone. And once that message takes hold, even rational households can start behaving defensively. A 62-year-old who spent decades doing the responsible thing can suddenly feel like the rules change without warning. They worked, they paid in, they waited, and now they are being told the program may not fully deliver what was promised. That does not feel like a policy debate. It feels personal. It feels like a threat. So the reaction is not, let me calmly model my options. The reaction is, I need to protect myself now. That emotional shift matters because Social Security is not like moving money between accounts or adjusting a portfolio mix. It is an income decision that can echo for decades. But panic shrinks the time horizon. It makes people focus on the next month, not the next 25 years. This is why even households with flexibility are starting to act as if they have no choice. Some people claiming early are not doing it because they ran out of money. They are doing it because they ran out of trust. They no longer trust the system. They no longer trust Washington to fix anything. They no longer trust that waiting will be rewarded. And once trust disappears, smaller guaranteed income now can feel emotionally safer than a larger guaranteed income later. The media environment makes this worse. Headlines are designed to compress complexity into fear. Social Security is running out. The trust fund is drying up. Retirees may face cuts. Those statements contain a real policy issue, but they often arrive without the context people need to make a smart decision. The result is not informed planning, it is anticipatory panic. And panic is persuasive because it offers immediate relief. Claim now. The check starts. The uncertainty quiets down. The retiree feels like they did something. That relief is real, but it may also be the most expensive kind of emotional relief because it can lock in a permanently lower benefit based on a temporary wave of fear. There is also a deeper psychological layer here. Many retirees already carry anxiety about markets, inflation, health costs, and the possibility of living longer than expected. Social Security fear does not arrive in isolation. It lands on top of all the other fears they are already carrying. That is why the reaction can be so strong. So the first cause of this early claiming wave is not just bad math. It is behavioral pressure. It is fear amplified by headlines, distrust, and the desire for immediate certainty. And that leads to the next painful truth. Once panic drives the decision, the real cost often gets hidden, because what feels like protection now can quietly weaken the income floor that matters most later. That is the next chapter. The permanent cut. Most people underestimate. What makes early claiming so dangerous is not that the first check is small, it is that the smaller check never stops being small. That is the detail panic hides best. When a retiree claims early, the decision often feels temporary. Just get the money flowing. Just reduce the pressure. Just stop worrying about what Congress might do. But the reduction is not a short-term adjustment. It becomes the base, month after month, year after year, through inflation adjustments, through market swings, through widowhood, through the years when the body gets weaker and the need for reliable income gets stronger. That is why a claiming decision made in the early 60s can still be shaping life in the late 80s. A 30% reduction does not sound abstract when it shows up in daily retirement life. It shows up when one spouse is gone and the surviving spouse is living on a thinner check. It shows up when medical bills rise and the margin for error gets smaller. It shows up when the portfolio has a bad year and the retiree wishes more of the budget were covered by guaranteed income instead of withdrawals. The cut is not just a number, it is a lower floor under the hardest years of retirement. This is where many people misunderstand the trade. They think claiming early means they are taking control. And in one sense, they are. They are getting access to money sooner. They are reducing uncertainty in the present. But they may also be giving up control in the future, because a permanently smaller guaranteed benefit leaves the household more exposed to exactly the risks that get more dangerous with age. A smaller check later means more reliance on the portfolio later. More reliance on the portfolio means more sensitivity to bad returns later. More sensitivity to bad returns means more fear later. And fear in later retirement is not a small issue. It changes behavior. It causes people to cut back too hard, delay care, avoid travel, and live with a level of financial caution that can quietly drain the life out of retirement. This is why the decision cannot be judged only by what it solves in the next year or two. The real question is whether the relief today is worth the permanent weakness it may create later. For some people, yes, it will be. If the household truly needs the income now, the choice may still be right. But for many others, especially those with enough savings to bridge the gap, the danger is emotional relief disguised as strategy. It feels smart because it ends the anxiety now. But ending anxiety now is not the same as building resilience later. And that is where the math becomes far more important than the headlines. Because once the emotional fog clears, the next question is this: what is delaying actually worth if someone lives a long time? Is it just an 8% talking point? Or is it something much more powerful than most retirees have been taught? Most retirees have heard the same simple line: delay Social Security and your benefit grows about 8% per year past full retirement age until age 70. That statement is true, but it is too small to explain why delaying can matter so much. Because the real value of delay is not just the percentage increase, it is what kind of income that increase creates. Social Security is not like a normal investment account. It is a government-backed, inflation-adjusted stream of income that continues for life. That makes it fundamentally different from pulling more from a portfolio where the retiree takes market risk, sequence risk, and the risk of simply living longer than expected. So when someone delays, they are not just waiting for more, they are converting patience now into a stronger guaranteed floor later. That is why the decision is better understood as insurance than as a bonus. But the math still matters. And this is where many calculators and conversations oversimplify the story. They compare the higher monthly check later against the smaller monthly check earlier and stop there. What they often fail to fully highlight is the opportunity cost of waiting. If a retiree does not claim from 62 to 70, that is 8 years of foregone benefits. During those years, the household must either spend from the portfolio, spend from other assets, or reduce spending. That means delaying is not free. It has a cost. The household gives up current cash flow in exchange for larger future income. This is why the break-even age exists. The retiree needs enough years of the higher benefit for the larger payments later to outweigh the benefits not received earlier. And yes, that break-even can take time. But once that point is crossed, the value of delay does not just inch ahead, it compounds in importance, because the larger check keeps arriving every month for life. Now add inflation to the picture. A larger base benefit means larger inflation adjustments in absolute dollars over time. That matters most in the later decades, when a retiree is most vulnerable to losing purchasing power. Now add market risk. A larger guaranteed benefit later can reduce how much a retiree needs to withdraw from investments during bad markets. That matters because poor returns are most dangerous when withdrawals are happening at the same time. Now add longevity. For someone who lives into their late 80s or 90s, delay can function less like a bet and more like a hedge against the exact future they feared most, living a long time with too little secure income. This is the part panic misses. Panic sees Social Security as money to grab before something goes wrong. Structure sees it as protection to strengthen before the hardest years arrive. And that leads to the most important balancing point of all. If delaying can be this valuable, why would anyone ever claim early? The answer is because some households are not solving the same problem. And for them, early claiming may still be the right move, when early claiming actually makes sense. A strong retirement strategy is not built on slogans. It is built on fit. That is why the honest answer to this Social Security panic wave is not everyone should delay. That would be just another oversimplified rule, and retirement is too personal for that. There are real situations where claiming early is not a mistake. It is the better choice. The first is compromised health. If a retiree has a serious condition that meaningfully shortens life expectancy, then delaying for a larger benefit later may not line up with reality. In that case, the household is not being irrational by claiming earlier. It is matching the strategy to the actual timeline they are likely facing. The second is genuine income need. This is not about comfort or lifestyle upgrades. It is about stability. If delaying would force the household into unsafe withdrawals, expensive debt, or cuts that make daily life unsustainable, then claiming early may be the responsible move. A strategy that looks elegant on paper but creates real hardship now is not a strong strategy. The third is limited savings or a weak bridge. Some retirees simply do not have enough liquid assets to comfortably fund the gap between early retirement and a later Social Security claim. If the bridge is too fragile, then forcing a delay can create more damage than protection. The fourth is a coordinated household strategy. In some couples, the lower earner may claim earlier, while the higher earner delays. That can improve present cash flow without sacrificing the stronger survivor benefit later. This is where nuance matters. A couple does not always need one unified claiming age. Sometimes the smartest plan is a split strategy. The fifth is low future exposure. If a retiree does not have large traditional retirement balances, does not face a major later tax problem, and does not need delay as longevity protection, then the benefit of waiting may be smaller than it is for someone with more future risk. These exceptions matter because they keep the discussion honest. They remind retirees that early claiming is not automatically fear-based. Sometimes it is reasonable. Sometimes it is necessary. But the key difference is intention. Claiming early because the household truly needs the income, or because the risk profile points that way, is one thing. Claiming early because a scary headline triggered panic is something else entirely. That is the dividing line this entire topic turns on. Panic says, take it before it disappears. Strategy says, match the claiming age to the household's real risks. And once that distinction becomes clear, the comparison becomes much easier to see. Because two retirees with the same savings can make opposite decisions and both be reasonable. The real question is whether each decision matches the household's life, health, timeline, and ability to absorb risk. That is what the next section is about. Two retirees, similar assets, similar age, very different claiming choices, and two very different versions of retirement that follow. Two retirees can look almost identical on paper and still end up living completely different retirements because one made a fear decision and the other made a planning decision. Imagine retiree A, age 62, similar savings to retiree B, similar work history, similar Social Security estimate, similar worries about inflation, markets, and Washington. Then the headlines intensify. Social Security is in trouble. The trust fund is running dry. Benefits could be cut. Retiree A feels the urgency immediately and claims early. At first, the decision feels good. The monthly deposit starts. The uncertainty drops. There is less need to pull from investments right away. Emotionally, the plan feels safer because the retiree no longer feels like they are waiting for something that may not arrive. Now imagine retiree B, same age, same fear. But instead of reacting, this retiree pauses. They review the actual structure of the system. They look at their bridge assets. They ask how long they are likely to live, what happens if markets are weak in their 70s, and what kind of guaranteed income floor they want later. Then they delay. In the first few years, retiree A often looks smarter. Their lifestyle may feel easier to support. Their portfolio may not need to cover as much immediately. And because early retirement is emotionally fragile, that short-term relief can look like proof that the choice was right. But retirement is not judged in year one. It is judged across decades. By the late 70s and 80s, the structure of the decision starts to matter more than the comfort of the beginning. Retiree B now has a larger guaranteed monthly benefit. That stronger floor reduces pressure on the portfolio. It can soften the damage of poor market returns. It can make inflation easier to absorb. And if this is a married household where the higher benefit was delayed, it may also create a stronger survivor benefit for the spouse who lives longer. Retiree A, by contrast, may begin to feel the quiet cost of the decision. The smaller check that once felt like protection now feels like a limit. It covers less of the monthly budget. It leaves more dependence on withdrawals. It creates more sensitivity to market weakness. It can also create more fear, because later life is exactly when people become less able to recover from mistakes. That is the direct consequence of panic claiming. It often solves an emotional problem in the present by creating a structural weakness in the future. There is also a deeper consequence that does not show up in calculators. Behavior. Retirees with a thinner guaranteed floor later often become more cautious and sometimes more anxious. They may underspend even when they do not need to. They may avoid travel, delay care, or keep their lifestyle tighter than necessary because they do not trust the future. In that sense, the cost of early claiming is not only financial, it can become psychological. A permanent reduction in income can create a permanent increase in caution. Now consider the broader social consequence. When fear-driven early claiming spreads, it means large numbers of retirees are making long-horizon income decisions based on short-term headlines. That weakens retirement resilience across the population. It also increases inequality of outcome, because retirees with more savings can sometimes survive an early claiming mistake better than those with less room for error. There is also a policy consequence hidden underneath all of this. Social Security fear does not operate in isolation. It lands in a country where retirees are already carrying market risk, health cost risk, inflation risk, and longevity risk. That means a panic decision in one area can intensify vulnerability in all the others. And this is why the comparison matters so much. Retiree A and retiree B may have started in almost the same place, but one built retirement around emotional relief, the other built retirement around late life durability. That does not mean delaying is always superior. It means the decision must match the real risk. If the household truly needs income now, early claiming can absolutely be the better path. But if the decision is being made mainly because fear is louder than logic, then the household may be protecting the wrong years. So the comparison teaches one hard lesson. A claiming decision is not just about what feels safer at 62. It is about what leaves the household stronger at 82. The right Social Security strategy is not built by trying to outguess every headline. It is built by asking better questions than the headlines want people to ask. A practical framework begins with one rule: slow the decision down. Fear creates urgency, and urgency is exactly what makes this choice dangerous. A retiree sees a story about insolvency, a projected trust fund shortfall, or possible future cuts, and the brain immediately translates that into, take it now before it is gone. But a claiming decision is too permanent to be made in a panic cycle. The first defense is time. Pause. Recheck the facts. Separate political noise from household reality. The second step is to test the bridge. Can the household safely fund the years between retirement and a later claiming age without taking destructive withdrawals, high-interest debt, or emotionally unbearable risk? This is where liquid savings, taxable assets, work flexibility, and spending needs all matter. If the bridge is solid, delaying becomes possible. If the bridge is weak, early claiming may be more reasonable. The point is not ideology. The point is whether the household can cross the gap safely. The third step is to test longevity honestly. Most retirees are not good at this because people tend to imagine death as either far away or very close, depending on mood. A better approach is to ask a more practical question. What if one spouse lives much longer than expected? What if the household is not planning for average life, but for the harder version of retirement, the late 80s, the 90s, the years when work is no longer an option and health costs rise? Delaying often becomes more attractive when the household stops asking how long the average person lives and starts asking how damaging a small check would be if life lasts longer than expected. The fourth step is to test survivor risk. For married couples, this can be the most important step of all, which claiming strategy leaves the surviving spouse with the strongest income floor later. If the higher earning spouse claims early, the reduced benefit may echo long after that person is gone. That means couples should not just ask when they want income. They should ask who is most likely to depend on that income later. The fifth step is to test panic itself. This sounds simple, but it matters. If the main reason for claiming is, I'm afraid the program will disappear, the household should treat that as a warning sign, not as a strategy. A strategy should be built on cash flow, health, longevity, taxes, and survivor protection, not on one frightening headline. The sixth step is to build a claiming decision into the whole retirement plan, not treat it as a separate puzzle. Social Security is connected to withdrawals, taxes, portfolio risk, spending behavior, and peace of mind. The best decision is rarely the one that wins a narrow calculator test. It is the one that strengthens the overall retirement structure. Looking ahead, this topic will only become more important. More Americans are retiring with high anxiety. More people are consuming financial headlines in real time, and trust in institutions remains fragile. That means fear-driven claiming waves may continue, but so will the need for better planning. Because the future of retirement belongs to households that can tell the difference between a system problem and a personal strategy. Social Security may face political pressure, it may face adjustments, but retirees still have one powerful advantage. They can decide whether to react emotionally or to build a plan that protects the years that matter most. A lot of retirees are not claiming Social Security early because the math changed. They are claiming early because fear changed. That is what makes this moment so important. A temporary wave of panic can push people into a permanent cut that follows them for the rest of retirement. What feels like protection at 62 can become a weaker income floor at 82. And that is the tragedy of fear-based claiming. It solves anxiety in the present while quietly increasing vulnerability in the future. The deeper lesson is not that everyone should delay. The deeper lesson is that Social Security should never be reduced to a headline reaction. It is one of the few decisions in retirement that can shape cash flow, survivor protection, late life resilience, and peace of mind all at once. That is why the real question is not, how fast can the household claim? The real question is, what kind of retirement is this decision building? One with short-term relief but a thinner future floor, or one with a stronger long-term foundation, built deliberately and without panic. For some households, early claiming will absolutely be the right move. But when the choice is driven mainly by fear that the system will vanish, the household may be protecting the wrong risk. If this video helped you see the claiming decision more clearly, subscribe for more deep, real-world retirement analysis built around what actually happens to people later in life, and share your thoughts in the comments. If you were making this decision today, what would worry you more, losing money now or locking in a smaller check for life?